we're really just going to be reviewing our database training. We might need to cut this up in 2 sections. The biggest thing that I want to point out, Alexandra, if you have any questions at any point in time, just holler at me and stop me in my tracks and I'll answer those questions. Obviously, you've already been working in the site a little bit and you've already been navigating around. So you might have a little bit of a deeper knowledge than what I would typically talk about. So like I said, if you have a question that pops up, just go ahead and ask it. And that always is fine with me. So we're just going to start off by talking about this home page. You guys have seen when you've logged into the back end of this site, this is the page that you're brought to. I'm just going to quickly kind of review what these different dashboard areas are used for. The first is the membership dashboard. And so this is comprised of our current membership roster, which has your member types. Your members are divided out into those member types, and then you're able to follow your members as they move through the different member type statuses. So when your members are active, they've paid their dues, they're in the active column. When they're in their grace period, meaning they haven't paid their dues, but you've given them that little bit of a buffer, you'll be able to find them in the grace period. And then after the grace period ends, they're going to wind up in this lapsed status. So they're not being deleted. They're not automatically moving to prospect profiles. They will hang out in this lapsed column until you physically move them to either prospects or delete their profiles. The cool thing in our system about deleting profiles is they're not disappearing forever. They're actually being more like archived. So you can always restore those profiles and all the information that was stored in those profiles at any time that you might need to, even if it's like 5 years down the road. One of my favorite features of this area is I can click on any of these numbers and it'll take me to a profile list. So if I wanted to see who these 22 grace people were, I could click that number and it's going to bring us right to the profile list. I'm going to talk a little bit more later about what we can do in the profile list, some of the functions that this has, but just kind of wanted to point out that that is a feature that we have, which is kind of cool. We also have our built-in non-member member type, that's what I call it, and that's prospects. And so we have your prospect profiles and then your total active count at the bottom. Any questions on this first little section?
No.
Nope.
All right, awesome. The new members in the last 90 days is really the same thing that you see in your current membership roster. It's just going to pull out any new members that have just joined in the last 90 days, and it'll highlight them over here. We just do that because we know how important it is to contact new members quickly and frequently, reiterating the membership benefits they're gaining by being a member with you guys. Those new members are going to reflect in both dashboards areas, by the way. They'll be part of the current membership roster, and then they'll also be shown again in the new member in the last 90-day roster. So you'll see them in both places.
Is there any way to change or to add one that says new members? Say if we wanted one that was new members in the last 6 months?
There's not a way to add that to our dashboard area. So there's some pieces of our product that's shared across all of our product, right? So like throughout all of our clients. And so if we changed it in one, that code would reflect across the board. So that's why that's the reason we're not able to change this, but you can search by expiration dates, who's expired in the last 6 months in the profile list. So I can show you how to do that.
Awesome, thank you.
Of course. Then we're brought down to our event dashboard. So as you've seen, this is pulling from your event registration forms that have been created. You'll notice that these have some kind of like missing titles. It's really important to always name our event sections when you create the form as it's being pulled into this area. So when we get to our forms training, which will be the third training that we do together, I'll make sure I show you exactly what I'm talking about there. These forms are also being pulled by the expiration date that was listed in the form. And so right now, all 3 of these, it looks like they've already come and passed. So I can make sure I point out when we do our forms training where you'll need to update those dates, those expiration dates in the forms to make sure that they're reflecting correctly on our dashboard, which these might be, but it's just something I commonly see that's missed. This will show us, of course, how many people attended those events in the past event attendance or how many people have registered so far for the upcoming event. Down at the bottom, we have our financial dashboards. And so our first is our aged receivables. This is going to show us how many outstanding invoices we have by how many days and how much money. And so this, because I'm zoomed in so much, it's probably not going to let us see it. but this will eventually, yeah, here we go. You guys will be able to see how many outstanding invoices you have by how much money. There's going to be a bar graph that's created. If you're current and up to date, you're going to see a big green bar populate. If you're 1 to 30 days past due, 31 to 60 days past due, 61 to 90 days past due, or 91 plus days past due on those invoices, you'll see big red bars that will populate to represent those. The last item that we have in our financial dashboard is our sales over time. So this is going to allow us to filter by revenue account how much money has come in per that revenue account in each month. So I can just use our filter by revenue account, select the revenue account we're interested in looking at. I don't know if we have any right now. And then we can apply that filter and it'll show us, you know, in this case, $15 came the month of July for this particular, it looks like a non-revenue account. So we'll probably need to talk about making sure our revenue accounts are set up in the system the right way. But as you guys start collecting money, you'll be able to really filter this and see where your money is coming from. Any questions on anything that we've looked over on this homepage?
No, I think it's all good.
Awesome. So one thing I want to go ahead and point out is if we ever want to come back to this homepage, all you have to do is select your home icon in the top left-hand corner, and this will always bring us right back here in the site. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about are your settings and your account settings. We are going to be skipping around tabs a little bit today. Moving forward, we'll be centralized under one tab at a time per training, but today we're a little bit all over the place. We're going to jump to the account settings tab. This is really just going to show you general account settings from that document you guys filled out way back in the beginning. So all that information is going to be reflected here. Something else, and probably the most useful tidbit of information, is going to be what's located in this top left-hand corner under account information. Once you guys graduate, you'll be ready to start calling into the help team to ask questions. They're going to ask you for an account number when you do that, so they can recognize your account, get into your administrative side, and help you out in any way that they need to. So you don't have to memorize that account number or write it down. It's always going to be listed in this account settings tab. This is also a great place to keep track of how many custom and prospect profiles you've used. So it looks like you have used over that limit of prospects that you needed. So because of that, we'll want to take a look at your prospects and determine if it would be beneficial for you guys to maybe buy more, or if you don't need everybody that's in that prospect tab right now.
So currently, since we're over, does that affect how much you guys are charging us, or what does that mean?
So our billing really keeps track of that. I haven't heard, like they haven't notified me to notify you that you're going to be charged more. So I'm thinking they just haven't seen it yet. Sometimes if you're still in implementation, our billing department will reach out to me and say, hey, what happened with this? And I'll say, you know, we're working through it. We're trying to find, you know, we've got duplicates, or they're narrowing prospects down. And so if they reach out to me, I would tell them that we're still working through it right now until you've graduated.
Okay, and so if I go through and delete them, then that won't count even though they get archived?
That is totally right. Yeah, okay. They won't count.
And what is the cost over $3,000?
So I think, y'all, if you bought more prospect profiles, I think you can get like 15,000 prospect profiles for like another $25 a month. So okay. It might be useful. So I could reach out to billing and have them kind of just tack on more prospects. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
I'll have them do that. Yeah, of course. Let me put a little note to myself on that. Usually that's a pretty minimal fee for gaining so many additional prospects. Okay. All right. Continuing through, you guys we have your system working in the Pacific time zone. We have your membership year start January 1st. Are you guys anniversary or are you fiscal? I can't remember right off the top of my head.
We're anniversary.
Perfect. So you can ignore this. I've overrode this setting somewhere else in the system, and I'll show you where that's at either on today's training or maybe the next time we talk. This is really just here as a placeholder, but like I said, it's in the member type settings. I've specified that your anniversary, so it really doesn't matter. I have your member number turned on. This is an attribute that I love to use just to keep your profiles up to date. If we wanted to edit, if you want to hide this member number from your members, we can do so through attribute security and profile owner attribute security. So we'll look at that a little bit later today. I have that you guys are using QuickBooks. Any notifications that go out from member clicks, if your members want to reply to that notification, their reply will be sent to this info@bruinprofessionals.com. And then up here in the top right-hand corner is just your billing information for member clicks to have on file. Okay, any questions on any of these account settings?
Nope.
All right, awesome. So next we're going to go ahead and start looking at the financials. Now I'm going to bring up my MemberClicks test site because it's a little bit difficult to imagine what your financials are going to look like once invoices are actually made. Actually, we might have a few. So I'm just going to go to financial and invoices. And we do. So this automatically brings us by default to our invoice list. This will house all of the invoices that have ever been created in your system, whether they're paid, open, partially paid, voided, it really does not matter. With that being said, we're not able to delete invoices out of your system. If you have an invoice that was a test or you don't need anymore, all we can do is void it, but it is still listed in the invoice list. Just to show you what this is going to look like once you have more invoices. So this is an example. A couple of things you can do in here. You'll be able to search your invoices, obviously, because at some point in time you're going to have so many. You can search by your member's first name, last name, their organization, or their invoice number. So I know that I have some test invoices in here. It is going to show us our invoices by the invoice number, type, first name, last name, organization, the status of the invoice, total amount, the due date, and then you can view the invoice. You can select any of these column headers to put them in numerical order, put them in reverse, same thing by type or any of the additional columns that we're looking at. We can also sort our invoices using any of these selections up at the top. So if I only wanted to see my voided invoices, it's going to only show us as voided. Same for paid. If I unselected void and only chose paid, it's only going to show us the paid invoices. We can also filter by invoice type. So if we only wanted to see renewal invoices for your members, we can apply that filter as well. If one of your members is looking for their invoice to be resent to them, their invoices will always be housed in their profile, which we're going to go through on the social community training. But sometimes a member just doesn't quite know how to get to that area or is maybe struggling with using their profile, in which case you can always search their invoice for them. You can select that invoice just by tagging it, and you can re-email it to them by selecting the email button. This is going to bring up their default email address. You can change this, or you can add an additional recipient onto that. A lot of times I see this being used, like if a member's company is paying for their membership for them, they may ask you to send it to their company, even though they can forward the one that they received. That's just kind of like a frequent way I see associations using this function. You're also able to create PDFs, so we could tag all of these technically, and we could create a PDF. So it says print 3 invoices. It's really creating a PDF of these. That's not going to automatically download to your computer, so we'll actually have to go to our reporting tab and exports. We're going to be using this area a good bit more as we work through our trainings, and then we can download the file. And this will show us what those invoices will look like. This is exactly how y'all's invoices will appear. Of course, it'll be your logo in the top right-hand corner. your association information in the top left-hand corner. If I had had more information in my test profile, you would see my name as well as my physical address. For renewals, it'll always say membership renewal. It'll list their member type, and then it'll list their new expiration date. Anytime a payment is made, it'll show you what type of payment, cash, check, card, the date the payment was made on, and how much the payment was for. And then we also have this area down at the bottom, which is a notes section on the invoice. I'm going to show you where you can apply different notes. I see this oftentimes used for like remit payment to information.
So can we, for that notes option, can we edit that for specific invoices? Because sometimes people ask me to include very specific information on the invoice. Or would that note just change it for all of them?
Sort of yes, sort of no. So that's actually the next thing we're going to talk about. So I'll kind of walk you through how you can change the notes on the invoices. Before we get there, I think we've just about covered, a couple of things I want to cover. If we wanted to go, if somebody sends you guys a check instead of making an online payment, same situation, you can search for that invoice using their first name, last name, organization, or the invoice number. We can also just search for an open invoice by sorting, selecting one of these open renewal invoices. If this happens to be the renewal invoice that you needed to apply payment to, you'll notice down here at the bottom, we can pay the invoice. So this is exactly what you're going to do on your end. If it's not a credit card, you can select offline payment and you can choose what type of offline payment it is. If there was a partial payment, you would change the amount paid. You can put in a reference or check number, the date received, and then you can just confirm that that's where the confirmation is going to go to. And then you would just submit, and at that time, the invoice will show paid. Also on here, you can make a credit invoice. You can void the invoice. You can download a specific single invoice from the invoice itself. Or you could enter notes down here at the bottom. And it'll even show you, as time goes on, of course, it'll show you the date that you added that note, and you can always remove it. This is my favorite tool if you have to void an invoice, because I know for me, I would walk away and about 10 seconds later, I would completely forget why I voided the invoice to begin with. So I love this note section, and these are all internal. So the note section down here at the bottom would not reflect on the member's side of the invoice. You can also go directly to your member's profile from their invoice. We're going to be looking at your members' profiles a little bit later today in the training. So before we keep going forward, any questions on this invoice list function or any of the things that we looked at here?
So I see that on there it says revenue accounts. Is that something we'll go over more, or is that something that's completely done through new law?
We're going to go over it, but it is done. Yeah, we're going to go over it. We're going to work our way down the row of these icons up here.
Cool. Then I'll just wait for you to get there.
Okay. That works. All right. So you mentioned earlier about the notes section and kind of like where that's pulling from. So that brings us to our first piece of homework that I'm assigning from today's training, and that's going to be on invoice templates. So you guys sent me notifications that'll go out for your members' renewals. So when your members are up for renewal, they're going to receive the automatic notifications that we've set up in the system. Now, member renewals are separate from anything else, really. I like to imagine renewals being kind of in their own little separate bucket. If the system creates any other type of invoice, we need the system to send out notifications reminding the member to pay that invoice, and really just to let them know that an invoice was created for them at all. So what that means is that if you guys have events or donations, sponsorships, you'll want to set up separate invoice templates for each of those different types of things. So what I would do when you guys get ready to sit down and do this homework is I would first write out a list of all the different types your system makes. I would keep it pretty generic. When I say that, I mean I wouldn't create a different invoice template for every event that you have, because it's going to create a lot of work for you guys. Instead, I would maybe have an event. And then if you have one big conference that's really big every year, then I would just do one for like that big conference. So I've already created one, and you're going to leave this one alone. You don't need to touch the default. But when you get ready to create new invoice templates, you're going to select create an invoice template. You can name it, for example, events. You'll select the net due date. So when is this, when do you want the invoice to be due from the day that it was created? 30 days is pretty typical. And then we have the footer information. So this footer information is where the notes are pulling from on the front of the invoice. So you mentioned, can you specify those? If you created a new invoice template and applied it to that specific invoice, then those notes would show up on the invoice that you applied it to. One cool thing about this is it is dynamic. So if you put notes on an invoice, I think, now that I say that, yeah. If you put notes on an invoice and then somebody calls you and says, Alexandra, I really need this, 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 and this information on there too. If you go into the invoice template and type it in this footer information, it's going to update on the invoice. You would have to resend it to them probably, but.
Yeah, okay.
So that's kind of like the first part of the function of invoice templates. The second, I mentioned that this is what's going to notify your member that they have an open invoice. If you want to remind them to pay the open invoice, if you want to send out a notification letting them know the invoice is past due, or if you want to set up a payment notification email. I would recommend at minimum setting up the payment notification email, so at least they're receiving confirmation that you received payment. So to set these up, all you have to do is toggle on the items that you want to use. And then you'd need to actually apply verbiage. So you would want to edit the email and add in the message that you want to go out with this. Same thing for the reminder, the past due, and the payment. You'll have to add verbiage to each of these. If you do not add verbiage to these areas, but you turn it on, it sends out a super, super generic spammy email that I know I wouldn't probably even look at. So if you're going to use these, I would definitely make sure you're adding verbiage. In addition, I would definitely make sure you set these up because I feel like it does a lot of the dirty work as far as tracking down or chasing down money.
Yeah, okay. And so you said that payment notification sends them a notification that we've received payment. Kind of like confirmation of their payment.
Yes, exactly. Any questions on any of these?
No, that makes sense.
All right, awesome. So this is going to be the first piece of homework. The second piece of homework is going to be the invoice settings. So this is actually going to be where your logo pulls from. So all you have to do is upload your organization's logo. The organization information box is going to be what information shows up on the invoice. So that's your association information that'll populate on the left-hand corner of the invoice. And then the last item down here allows you to specify what invoice number you want to start at. Until you get ready to start creating actual invoices in the system, I would keep it at like 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if we create any test invoices, we can easily determine, okay, you know, these small numbers were all test, we were playing around. Anything starting at 1,000, these are legitimate member invoices. That's just a tip that I've kind of learned along the way. You don't have to do it that way if you want to go ahead and set it at 1,000 or 5,000, whatever invoice number you want the system to start at. Any questions on the second piece of homework?
No.
Awesome. Now we're going to take a little peek at these revenue accounts. So I've added all the revenue accounts in here that you guys would have provided to me. These revenue accounts are super crucial and have to be done in a very specific way, because if we want MemberClicks to communicate with QuickBooks, what's going to happen is if we ever decide to pull a transaction report and import into QuickBooks, each of these revenue accounts, QuickBooks is going to look at and see if it recognizes the revenue account. from what you guys sent me, I would have copy and pasted whatever revenue accounts you had into MemberClicks the exact way that they were provided. So these should all be exactly correct, but we'll do a test before we actually just willy-nilly throw everything into QuickBooks. We'll also want to make sure we back up QuickBooks before we do a test as well. So if anything happens, if it's mapped incorrectly, we can always restore the information you had previously. So what I mean by that is if we put in here event, revenues, semicolon, sangria, and we happen to add a space between the semicolon and sangria. When we import this, QuickBooks isn't going to recognize it because it has a very specific formula for words that it has to read. So because it doesn't recognize it, it'll create a new revenue account, which messes up your revenue account mapping and will make your financial people very mad at us. So it's super specific as to how these have to be added in. Like I said, I just copy and pasted from the chart of accounts you all provided. And we'll do some tests when we get ready to do our first transaction report into QuickBooks before we just throw everything in there at once. If you need to create a new revenue account, go ahead.
So those transaction reports, are those done through MemberClicks, or is that something that I'll be doing?
They're done through MemberClicks, and so I'll show you that in just a second where you'll be pulling those from.
Okay, and then how often is that happening?
So it's updated real time, but
Okay.
typically my associations, I mean, you can run it once a week, once a month, every day. Probably not, you probably wouldn't want to do it any less than once a month.
Okay, got it.
If we wanted to add a new revenue account, so if you guys added a new revenue account in QuickBooks and you wanted it to reflect in MemberClicks, you would have to add it. So we would just select add new revenue account. You'll name your revenue account, so you'll just copy and paste it however it's coming from your chart of accounts in QuickBooks. You can add a description, but you definitely don't have to. And then you would toggle on if it's for a dues revenue account, or you would leave toggled off if it's for any other account in the system. And then at that point, once the name is added, you would just hit save and it would add it to this chart of accounts, and that's all you would have to do. Any questions on that?
Nope, that sounds good.
Awesome. The payment processor is just Moolah that we have set up in here, I believe. So this is still something that you guys are working through. MemberClicks isn't going to be able to start collecting money until this is complete. But this demo will be taken away when Moolah is in here for real, and it'll be your login credentials as well. Do you guys have any questions on Moolah? How's that process going?
Apparently there was like one of the forms that we sent in didn't match up with a different form, and so we're trying to figure that out. And so it's kind of on hold right now, unfortunately. So as soon as that's not something that I really have control over, though, it's kind of an issue of us being an organization through a separate organization. So it'll hopefully get fixed as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help through that process, but I do know there's a lot of paperwork. So
yeah,
I'll
it's
keep
just like
myself
a
in the
form that
loop.
we need to find, but thank you.
Okay. All right. So this is everything for the financial and invoices tab. The next thing that I want to look at is the financial transactions tab. So this is where you're going to come when you're ready to start pulling those transaction reports. This is going to be showing the debit and the credit. So the sale and then the purchase, right? So somebody owed you $15 and then they paid that $15. So the debit and the credit, those will even out and equal zero. So this is going to be a little bit more detailed, right, than what you would see in the invoice list. You can sort your transaction report by date. So if you want to pull the transaction report from the 1st of July, through the end of July, you can do that. You can sort by revenue account, by transaction type, payment type, credit card type. You can also search your transaction report by first name, last name, organization, and invoice number, just like we could search the invoice list. Do you know off the top of your head if you guys are using QuickBooks Online or desktop?
Online.
So since you're using QuickBooks Online, you'll have to, there's like an app that you'll have to purchase, and I have a full-on kind of resource or article that I can give to you guys that can help walk you through the process. There's even an app that we recommend. It's really, really inexpensive. QuickBooks just did this when they brought out this QuickBooks Online piece, and it's with all softwares. Like, I think they just kind of decided to add this application piece into it where their system, their new QuickBooks system, can't read the file. It has to be run through the app first, and then it can be imported into QuickBooks. But basically, you'll be exporting into CSV file and then running it through that app, and then it'll go into QuickBooks. So I'll send you that document at some point, probably in my follow-up email from today. And that can kind of help you walk through exactly what will need to be done and a little bit more in the detail of the financial piece. Do you have a specific financial person that would be interested in doing a training with me?
Yeah, definitely. I know she was CC'd in the emails before, but I think she was taken off the email chain. But yeah, we have an accountant team that deals with most of the financials.
Awesome. So typically what I'll do is schedule like a little 30-minute financial training so we can go through some of this stuff together, but I'll send that document to you that you can give to them as kind of like a preliminary so they can start familiarizing themselves with the system.
Okay, and I'm not sure if they have desktop. I could be wrong with the QuickBooks thing, but I'll send that to them anyway just in case. And then I'll just add their email to our email chain, and you can reach out to them to set up the training. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. And that document goes over what QuickBooks desktop or online would look like and the steps that would need to be taken. It'll go through both. So regardless of which one they have, it'll be useful information for them. All right. So this is everything on invoices. Before I keep kind of rolling forward, we only have about 15 minutes, but before I keep rolling forward, do you have any questions on any of the financial pieces?
No, I think this all works for me.
Awesome. So one other piece that I'd like to try to get through is talking a little bit about attributes and how they act in the system. Now, you and I have already talked a lot about custom attributes, and we created those in our system from the Excel documents the Excel document that was provided to me. I know you sent me some additional documents that might have different information, and I have not had an opportunity to look at that yet. It'll probably be tomorrow before I can. But if we go under the database tab and attributes, this is going to bring us into this area that's all about our attributes in our system. Now, we are comprised of 3 different types of attributes. Built-in attributes is what you see here on my screen. These are anything that we've seen across the 1,700 associations, we've worked with that we know you guys are going to collect on your members because everybody needs this information. Things like name, contact name, email address, physical address, phone number, and then their organization. Now, we cannot change these or not include them, but we can manipulate these. So if I went into email address and edited these settings, this allowed us to create custom labels that fit the type of emails that you guys have collected on your members. We can collect up to 5 different emails, 5 different phone numbers, or 5 different physical addresses on any of your members. So if I wanted to also go ahead and grab a secondary email, maybe a spouse's email, maybe maybe you have a tertiary email. We can build up to 5 of these different types of labels that you can keep in your member's profile. Now, you'll notice I can delete these ones that I just created, but I can't delete the first 2. The reason why is because the second information is tied to one of your attributes in a member's profile. It's no longer deletable. So what that is doing is preventing you from ever, like, if I could delete this work email from this area, it would delete it across the board from all of your members' profiles. So instead of running the risk of you guys accidentally deleting like a mass amount of information, we just don't make it deletable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Awesome. So Aside from built-in attributes, we also have system attributes in MemberClick. So system attributes are going to be anything that the system uses to keep track of your members' membership period and how much they owe. Things like their member type, their member number, their expiration date, their join date, just really anything the system has to know in order to, like I said, keep track of their membership period. Now, we can't do anything with those attributes. We can't add them. We can't even look at them in this area. They're always going to be stored in your members' profiles. So that would be the second type of attribute. The third type of attribute we have in the system, which we've talked a lot about, are those custom attributes. And these are right down here at the bottom. So these are going to be any additional fields that I wouldn't have known, that we would have needed to collect on your members, but I saw that we needed to collect it from your database. And so we've set all these up. We can view all these. Same kind of thing here. If there's information tied to it, we can't delete it. Same thing with like selection sets. We weren't able to delete the selection set options that we didn't like until we cleared those selection set options from your members' profiles. And then we were able to delete the options we didn't like. I know we have a ton of deletes in here, and we're going to have our engineers delete this at some point for you guys once we kind of are 100% cleaned up and ready to go with the system.
So in the future, if we create an attribute and then want to delete it, will we have to have the engineers do that? Or is it just if there's information tied to it?
Only if there's information tied to it. It's like if I copied this advanced ID, if I copy one of these IDs, or this custom attribute, this is like recognized as new. So technically there's no information stored in this custom attribute. So you'll notice how the delete is green because I can delete it because there's no info tied to it.
Okay. So we could go through technically and clear all the info from people's profiles to be able to delete things.
Technically, yeah. Technically you could.
Okay.
It would just take a little while. And so these are custom attributes. Now, the reason I wanted to go through these is this leads me into kind of our third chunk of homework. And that's going to be attribute security and profile owner attribute security. I've set these at default settings for you guys, but you'll want to come back in here and look a little bit closer to make sure they are set up properly. Profile owner attribute security is what your members can do and see in their own profiles. So when they're in the front end of the system in their member profile, right now we've given them permission to edit the majority of their info. We have a legend over here in the left-hand corner. So the little blue eyeball means they can view it. The little green pencil means they can edit it. And the little no red sign over here means that it's hidden. So they can't see it, edit it. They don't even know it exists. We would need to go through. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so I edited these last week. Did you go through and reset them to default since then?
No, so what you're thinking of is attribute security, which does look differently. We'll look at that in just a second.
Okay, well, I've edited profile owner as well. But
so there are some edits in here that it would have held.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure those.
Yeah, it will hold the edits that you make in here. And so some of the stuff, yeah, you're right. You can see it, can't even see it, can edit, and then kind of so on. So like as an admin, you can do kind of whatever you want to do in your profile, and then there are some different selections that you created throughout the rest of these. So this is probably perfect. I don't think you guys will actually need to do anything with this. Maybe just double check it. And then the other side of that is attribute security, what your members can see in other members' profiles. And I think we're already done with this as well. Admin, so what we would need to ask ourselves is what can an admin do or see in a prospect profile? You know, an admin can edit anything for any of your members. But if we use our drop down and look at affiliate members, you know, what can they do or see in prospect profiles or admin profiles, affiliate profiles, or the member profile? And it looks like they can really just kind of see. I might have said this at default for you guys, so you might want to come back in here and edit some of this.
Yeah, I didn't know that existed until a member emailed us saying, I can see everyone's information on everything. So I changed it for members, but not for the rest of the group. So I need to go in and do that.
Yeah, perfect. So this will be a little piece of homework to just come through here, and it's tedious, but you only have to do it this one time and just ask yourself, okay, as a chapter leader, what can I do and see? As a, just your member, which is I think the most common. And it does look like you did this one, or maybe I did this one. What can your members see in prospect profiles? Nothing. What can they see in admin profiles? It looks like they can pretty much see everything. Can they see in affiliate members profiles, and then other members member profiles? So I am going to outline all of these little homework pieces in my follow-up email from today, and I'm also going to send resources along with those, with a bullet point of the things that need to be done. So if you get in here and you forget what you're supposed to do, there are tons of resources that I'm sending along that will help you walk through each of these pieces. Do you feel equipped to be able to complete this?
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Because we only have like 8 minutes left, I don't want to get into the next big chunk in fear that we might get cut off. So any questions? I know we've already got our next training scheduled. Anything that you need from me right now other than those additional Excel documents you sent? And then I know that I need to make the social community video. I'm going to give that a stab, and then the BPR sponsor logos.
Yeah. I think for now that might be it. I just need to go in and change some of the permissions for chapter leaders, if you could just give me a quick reminder of how to change the group permissions for what functions they can do.
So what are they allowed to do in the system?
Okay, so that's an admin person. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Cool. And then if I wanted our financial team to be able to do that, would I be able to create another one that says financial or something like that?
Exactly. So we could just go to database and group.
Okay.
And we could just call this financial. And then same thing, we would go to database and admin permissions, and we could give, oh my goodness. I just did that, didn't I? It may take, there we go. And we can give them just permission to the financial piece. So I just now did that. So you'll just want to, in their profile, add them to that financial group in their profile, and that will give them these permissions on the back end.
Okay, awesome. And then you said in future training, we're going over profile lists and how we can use those, right?
That's exactly right. So we're going to pick back up pretty much there. There's a couple other little pieces I want to go over quickly, and then we'll get to the profile list and then profiles and how they're organized on our next training. Okay.